Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, June 4th, 2026, and today we're talking if you should pre-soak seeds, advocating for the causes you believe in, and what do I do with lightly frosted tomato plants. So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. We are 1 week out from the first official World Cup game, and I should just beg forgiveness now for my behavior over the next month and a half. I do my best to not talk too much soccer on the show any more than I absolutely have to, but when the world's biggest sporting event hits, especially on home soil, it's going to be a little bit hard for me to leave it alone. Anyway, I am farming, though, a lot, and I'm having more fun, in fact, than I did last year for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me. I guess I just feel a little bit less overwhelmed with the show now that it's in kind of a rhythm and farming at the same time. But yeah, got the trellis for the field tomatoes started yesterday, giving the garden that vertical look. It's always one of my favorite things, you know, like when the garden starts to have that verticality to it, trellises and corn stalks and all the things. That, to me, is really when summer begins, the verticological summer, as they call it. I called it that. But yeah, finished up my cultivation, got the tomatoes in the tunnel pruned and set up, ready to produce a lot of fruit. Putting more field tomatoes in today with, cross his fingers, my sweet potatoes as well, and gonna get some lettuce out. Big day for a Thursday, we'll see. In fact, it's gonna be a big few weeks of busting my butt, so I can justify watching some soccer next week, and then for several weeks after that, every day. Even games that I have absolutely no stake in. Anyway, what are you all up to? Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share it with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always a highlight of my week to see those. All right, so Thursdays are our therapy day, where we collectively take a few Patreon questions and where I encourage you to think about how you would answer each one. As we always say, the best way to learn is to teach, right? So I will take the Patreon questions, but please feel free and encouraged to add your thoughts in the comment section as to how you would answer them. So today's first Patreon question comes to us from Astrid Cook, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, less of a farming question, more about other things you talk about on the pod. You often mention the need for policy changes, cultural shifts, etc. that need to happen to make positive environmental change in our current era. Are you engaged in any policy advocacy? Are you familiar with the Institute for Social Ecology started by Murray Bookchin? I am on our county environmental affairs board, and my husband works with that organization to promote cultural change toward very similar values you often share. Would you feel comfortable sharing a bit more about the relationship between farming, gardening, and advocacy and cultural change, and how you work on this in your life? Sorry for the personal question, but often when you start going on about data centers, etc., I think myself that there are city and county advisory boards usually that are supposed to advocate on these issues, and I would love to have farmers on our environmental affairs board. Unfortunately, our city is annexing and rezoning much of the land in our ag district so it can be developed into new suburbs, but very important to be a thorn in the side," end quote. Love it, and great question here. Earlier this year, in fact, I went to Frankfort, that's our state capital here in Kentucky, to advocate for several environmental issues with the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth and the Sierra Club. And as you suggest here, it turned out to be quite helpful to the causes we were discussing that day, to have a farmer there who would be directly affected by, for instance, data centers and farmland they gobble up. I try to make at least one trip up to Frankfurt per year to advocate for some farmer policy or another. Without question, I wish I had time to be more involved than I currently do, but also if I, who work 12 hours a day every day and coaches his kids' soccer teams, can do it, I think anyone can find some time to get involved locally. It really does make a big difference to just show up. Politicians respond really well to farmers, and not to mention it's pretty fun and educational to be in the state capital talking to the folks who make the policy happen. I think because there are so many problems out there in the world, and it's all very overwhelming, that we often forget just how effective each and every one of us can be by just simply getting involved. Showing up to places. Politicians just never really see constituents. But you know who really knows that really well? Oil companies, natural gas companies, big tech, they all know that if they get people in front of the politicians are much more likely to hear them out, especially if the opposing view never really comes by. If the politicians only ever hear one side, they assume that's the side that's the most passionate. It is not just money, but apathy on which bad policy thrives. In fact, I think more so than just complaining about the state of the world, perhaps that idea is what I need to talk about more. The average person, especially the average farmer, wields a lot of power with local politicians, truly. So when I can't actually be physically advocating for something, given my bonker schedule, I can at least be advocating for that, to get involved. So yeah, it's worth spending a few minutes on Google or wherever looking for some farm or environmental advocacy groups in your region today. Get on, a mailing list, go open the emails, go do a thing or two, call a politician, whatever makes sense. A lot of the governing sessions when policy is made are in the winter here in the US, so it bodes well with our schedules as farmers in general. Great questions. And what about you all? What does your local involvement look like? What resources do you recommend? Let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, soaking seeds, or shall we? We will return. Whether or not we should soak seeds is really, anyway, you'll get it. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything: custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show. A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this work bring you $2 worth of value per month, $5, $24 per year, whatever it is? Because there's a little bit of a discount. Anyway, if so, you can show that love over there at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to those questions. Now, today's second Patreon question is, well, maybe more of a comment, but it comes from Patreon member Caroline Scully, who kindly sent us an article that somebody had written about soaking seeds before planting based on the author's own research, and wanted to know our thoughts. And thanks for this, Carolyn. The article is called Soaking Seeds Before Planting: What Works, What Doesn't, and Why. I'll link it in the show notes, but what the article contends, just the TLDR, is that soaking certain seeds is not always a good idea, and the author does some, small experiments to back up this thesis. Now, I'm not going to pick the whole article apart, but it's a small amount of research mixed with some anecdotal evidence and also a little bit of conjecture that makes it somewhat confusing. For instance, at one point, the author contends without citation that soaking seeds together spreads disease. Maybe, but also that will depend significantly on what you soak them in, what diseases we're talking about, for how long, etc. It's just kind of a weird thing to contend without some sort of evidence. But anyway, I do agree with the author's premise that soaking seeds is probably not necessary for every seed, as we've discussed on here before. Soaking or priming, just to back up, is not just an ancient, which the author notes, practice, but has been pretty well studied at this point, and there is no shortage of supportive evidence in the literature. When executed properly, priming seeds can speed up germination, reduce abiotic stress responses, etc. Not saying there isn't, room for nuance there, and that certain seeds won't benefit from certain soaking treatments and others from no soaking at all. But for a lot of seeds, priming can greatly increase germination rates and speed up germination, which the author also sees with several seeds in their trials. So anyway, let's just do a quick overview of soaking seed, what seeds make sense to do it with, and what seeds don't, because I agree with the author that you don't need to soak every seed, and over soaking them can harm germination rates. So let's just talk about it. First, why? Why soak seeds, at all? Well, the idea is to replicate what nature does naturally. Seeds fall into the soil, and while there, they get wet and dry, over and over until the conditions are right for them to germinate. Most seeds you buy have not been through this process. It's just like raw, dry seed. So the idea is that the seed we receive is a little behind in the process in getting ready to germinate, and soaking them correctly can encourage better germination. And the research largely bears this out, that a small, less than 12-hour soaking can do just that. Soak them too long, this is really important, and germination can indeed decrease. But that less than 12-hour soaking, sometimes as little as 4, is fine. So anyway, how it works is that we like to soak seed overnight in compost extract for the crobes, the tiny ones, and then drain the seed the next day. We do this with beets, spinach, cucurbits, okra, beans, cover crops, etc., and could do it with several other crops such as tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, grains, etc. The crops that we don't really bother with are things like radishes, arugula, turnips, lettuce, and other fast germinators. Like, there's no need to necessarily prime those because they're going to germinate so quickly anyway. And although carrots are technically something you can prime, I don't fiddle with that one as much just because the seeds are small and I worry about them drying out too much, because I have seen how that, in the soil at least, can kill germination rates quite a bit. Technically, however, according to research, it is possible to prime carrot and parsnip seed. I just don't do it. Anyway, you soak the seed overnight and either go ahead and plant them into the right conditions the next day, or you can then dry them out and store them like 3 to 6 months tops, though some suggest you could go longer. And that's it. I've run some small trials myself, and priming, especially for spinach and beet seed, is a simple and easy way to increase germination rates and speed to germination by a couple days at least. For emphasis, if you have trouble with late summer spinach, which I know many of you do, priming can definitely help there. So yeah, that's the basics. It does work. Just don't soak them for too long. And the author contends soaking didn't help their beans in their own research, and that may be true for certain varieties. But in general, the research seemed to say that soaking beans in, for instance, Rhizobium inoculant has all sorts of benefits. So yeah, as long as you don't soak them for too long, priming is generally a good idea for most medium to large seeds like that. Fun topic, Caroline. Thank you. And what say you all? What has been your experience with priming, good, bad, or otherwise? Let us know. And we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, frosted tomatoes, the hot new look. Be right back.
Yesterday I was clever. Wanted to change the
All right, our final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Lainey, who writes, quote, alarm bell. So I did the classic spring thing where I decided to roll the dice on transplanting tomatoes a little ahead of the last frost date, zone 9A. Most varieties don't make it through summer, so it always feels like there's a rush to get them started before it gets really hot. And of course, we had a light frost and we got some cold damage. They all survived, but a few branches and some of the newer growth lost leaves. It's a few weeks later, and I have a lot of bushy growth near the tops of the plants rather than a clear central stem, and I don't know if that's a problem or not. Is this cause for concern? Is there anything I can or should do? Prune the new growth back to try to establish a central stem. I did start more tomatoes knowing it was taking a risk. If these plants are just done for, I can pull them out and replace them, but it would be unfortunate to lose that growing time. Any advice appreciated, end quote. All right, thank you, Lainey, and I did answer this question when it came in because of the alarm bell. And in fact, I got a similar question from a certain editor recently. We'll call him Spike. And Spike's tomatoes had also been hit by a frost and were likewise seeing a lot of vegetative growth near the base. This is common for tomatoes that get a little frosted, and for both scenarios, you will just have to identify a main stem and trim all the rest of the suckers. A sucker is not a pejorative here. I mean, at least it's not supposed to be. It could be. But a sucker in tomato production just means another main stem, and you want to remove all but one of those where they have burst out of control like that. So on a tomato plant, you have leaves, clusters, and suckers. These are kind of what grows out of the main stem. The suckers will become other main stems with leaves, clusters, and more suckers. And as growers, we generally want to reduce the number of suckers to increase the fruit and decrease the wildness, or more accurately, ensure adequate airflow. In the field, we don't normally bother with that too much, like pruning our suckers, but in a situation where they got a little toasted and burst out in that sort of hyper vegetative growth, it's good in my opinion to get them back on track with, as you suggested here, a single leader, i.e. one main stem, and trim off all the rest. If you leave the extra stems, that will take up a lot of the tomato's energy and potentially, very likely, reduce the yield. Trimming them down to one or possibly two main stems should restore the tomatoes to some amount of normalcy, though they may continue to sucker a little bit from that original, burst point for a while or for their entire lives. I don't know. Hard to say. In general, though, the tomatoes should rebound if they are regrowing. No need to necessarily start back over or anything like that, and those extra tomatoes you started could probably go in the ground somewhere else. Or if you lose any of these tomatoes while you're pruning them back, maybe they serve as a replacement, which happens. Sometimes you just snap the whole thing off. Anyway, some growers even contend that this frosting even leads to better tomato flavor, though I can't really find any research to back that up. It may be wishful thinking, but I guess if you get tomatoes off of them at all, that's certainly better than, no tomatoes. So anyway, I hope that was helpful, and listeners can let us know what you all think or what your experiences have been. Otherwise, I'm done here. You're done here. We're all ready for Friday. So goodbye, Thursday. It's been real. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor a show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear.
So I'm changing myself.
Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to David Todd, our new microbe. Shouts, David. And way to show your support. And to show you thanks, I'd tell you a ridiculous story. So, all right, no doubt you, as you will recall, our two young tribeswomen are tracking the rest of their tribe who have been kidnapped by the Valley workers. And when they finally catch up, they cloak themselves. Now, this is kind of hard to explain if you're not from the tribe, but these tribes people are masters of their world, master trackers. They have to be master hunters. They also have to be that. And so their ability to blend in with the natural world seems to those of us who have never seen it to be mystical or almost otherworldly. And so the kidnappers are taken completely off guard when seemingly out of nowhere pop two young tribeswomen who fight them off with their spears and free the tribespeople quietly without arousing the suspicion of others in the kidnappers band. Anyway, then our two young women realize the people working in the fields, they must also be from other local tribes, and they too should be freed, and that is for tomorrow on The Freelanders. Which sounds like, I don't know, like a bad novel. But it's not. It's a great novel, and it's not a novel at all. So that's novel. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow for Friday, for Feedback Friday. You can tell me what you all think. Bye.
Hey everybody, Spike here, and aside from having the coolest real name in all of the land, just a quick tomato update on my frosted tomatoes. I did take Farmer Jesse's advice. I pruned them down to a single stem, and you can kind of see down here where they've got the frost damage, but they are growing and they are so happy now and starting to flower and just doing really well. So don't fret if you have, like me, a couple of frost damaged tomatoes, because if you prune them, follow Farmer Jesse's advice, and if your name is Spike like mine is, then they will bounce back and you will be happy.
Stop.